Good evening and welcome to the Greenfield Public Schools Special School Committee meeting. Today's Monday, March 1st, 2021, and this meeting is being held fully remotely in accordance with the Governor of Massachusetts March 12, 2020 order, suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law GLC 30A, Section 20. We're going to get right. Actually, before we get into the agenda, I'm going to apologize for my son in the background. He's not usually around when I'm doing school committee meetings, so I apologize ahead of time if you can hear that. The second thing is I want to welcome our interim superintendent, Dr. Judy Houle, to her first official meeting of the school committee. She came to the district and started on February 20th of this year, and we're very happy to have her with us. And we'll all get a chance to learn a little bit about her and talk to her later on in the meeting. And I also, actually, let's move into the rest of the meeting and have Glenn, why don't you do Secretary Johnson do a roll call and a call to order, please?
Certainly. Member Karen?
Here.
Vice Chair Ekstrom?
Present.
Member Hollins?
Present.
Secretary Johnson-Musad, I am here. Chair Poyetti?
Here.
Member Wall?
Here.
Mayor Wiedegardner is not here, but we have a quorum.
Wonderful, thank you. So we'll call to order at 6:01 p.m. I want to make another announcement regarding public comment this evening. We do have public comment as the next item on the agenda. I want to ask that if your public comment is related to the budget, we'd ask you to save that comment for when we actually do the budget discussion. We'll have a separate area of public comment during that time. But we will do public comment the way that we normally do. First, we'll ask anyone who is able to and on the WebEx with us to indicate in the comments section that they would like to make a public comment. And we'll go after that with folks who need to identify through voice over the phone line. Do we see anyone?
Not yet.
Okay. Another call for public comment, not related to budget.
No one in the chat. Oh, yes, here we go.
Okay.
Susan Ross.
Susan Ross, you will have 3 minutes. Please state your name and the town you live in and go ahead with your comment.
Okay, my name is Susan Voss. I live in Greenfield. I am an instructional assistant at the Academy of Early Learning, and I am the Unit C representative for the GEA. I haven't spoken to the school committee in quite a while, and your numbers have changed, and that's pretty cool. This evening, I would just like to send kudos out to the work of our district's head nurse, Pam Owen, and the principals of each of our school buildings for their hard work of determining the numbers and placement of air filters in our buildings to get ready for in-person learning. I know it was not an easy task to figure out which rooms were going to be able to be used. As someone who goes into the Academy of Early Learning daily to do our meetings with our kids, I really appreciate it. We look forward to seeing these air purifiers in our classrooms soon to begin readying to have a safe environment for both our students and our staff. And Amy, Joe is never a problem. Please give him a hug for me. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else? Secretary Johnson-Musad, waiting to comment from the chat section.
No one in the chat.
Okay. We will move into anyone who would like to verbally identify that they would like to make a public comment. Don't be shy. Anyone at all. Going once, going twice. Okay, we are going to move into the FY22 budget public hearing. And give me 1 second to get my notes out. I would like to start a motion from the school committee to open the Greenfield Public Schools fiscal year 22 budget public hearing.
So moved.
That was member Ekstrom. Do I have a second?
Second, Johnson Musad.
Thank you, Secretary Johnson Musad. And let's begin with public comment. Now, again, this is any public comment specific to the budget presentation and the budget documents that were released ahead of time. We'll do it the same way. Anyone who wants to make an indication in the chat that they would like to comment can do so now, and then we'll take anyone by voice.
Chair Prayati, we might want to have a vote on that motion.
Oh. Maybe I'm a little out of practice, huh? Secretary Johnson Musad, thank you, Susan Farber. Secretary Johnson Musad, would you do a roll call vote for us, please?
Member Karen,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ekstrom,
Yes.
Member Hollins,
Yes.
Secretary Johnson Musad. I'm a yes. Chair Prayati,
Oh, yes.
Member Wall.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, so now we'll go back to the public comment specific to the FY22 budget. Anyone out there interested in making a public comment? Don't be shy. I'm not seeing anyone. Are you?
Nope.
Secretary Johnson Musad? Okay, and anyone verbally interested in making a public comment related specifically to the FY22 budget? Don't be shy. I'm also not hearing anyone. Going once, going twice. Okay, so we will move into actually the budget presentation portion of this. And Dr. Houle, we've certainly baptized you by fire here, putting you right into the budget cycle, right in time for the presentation. But I know you've put a bunch of stuff together that I think folks are going to be ready to dig their teeth into, so to speak. So why don't you go ahead?
Thank you, Chair Prayati. I'm going to share my screen. Let's hope everybody can see it. Here we go. Everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All righty. So when I used to teach graduate school, I used to teach school finance as a course. And so one of the things that I did with my students and will do with you is just talk about how budgets should be speaking to the work of the district a little bit. And before we get started, I just thought I would share a little video with you that was shared with me just to remind us about what our focus is, because sometimes we get caught up in the numbers and forget why we're really here. So I hope you enjoy this.
Miss Gallipo and Miss Tassie, for all that you do, this first grade class would like to thank you. You're working hard to teach us, even through a snowy storm. We have fun learning with you when we're together at home. Learning remotely hasn't been easy at all, but with your help, we'll be ready for next fall.
Are we on mute? I can't tell.
You fill our candy jar to remind us to make better choices, because sometimes we forget to use our indoor voices. And so we would like to take a moment to show our appreciation by all joining together in a standing ovation. Class, class, class.
So I just thought that was really sweet and just kind of a reminder of why we're here and why we're talking about the budget in terms of trying to move forward. I also just oftentimes talk to people about the fact that the budget should be speaking to the district's vision and goals and your beliefs. And so I went onto your website and found the current vision that was adopted by the school committee, and this is sort of a paraphrase of it, but that our budget should be speaking to the two ways in which we help every student succeed, that we make sure that every family is welcomed and partnered in the education of their children, and that every educator is considered an integral part of what goes on within regard to students. That the budget should also support safe and supportive learning environments, community engagement, high quality educational opportunities for all students, and assessing student growth through measures that reflect their unique differences. It also tells us if we're spending our funds wisely and well. And it just reminds us that our decisions, both budgetarily and otherwise, should be guided by the impact on students, and that student success should be the measure of the work. So typically in a budget cycle, what happens is you spend some time analyzing data. And I walked into this a week and a half ago, so I haven't done much of that particular piece of the puzzle. But I will say that budgets are sort of a snapshot in time, that it is an iterative process. Even though you adopt a budget with a bottom line, you're still, things change with the budget as you're going through. So it is an iterative process where you're really trying to analyze data around how students are doing, how you're working on achieving your goals and objectives as a district. And then the second piece is then to act on that. What are the resources that we need to bring to bear to make sure that students have a high quality education and that they are successful? Once a budget is adopted, then it's managing those funds wisely and well, being good stewards of the funds that are given to us by the public, and making sure that those funds are being allocated in ways that are helpful to that. And then we do some more research. How can we better use our funds, and do that whole process? So it is a cycle that is iterative and continues throughout the work that we do. Some of the expense drivers for school budgets, student learning options. How are we providing for students in ways that make some sense to them? How are we caring for the health and well-being of our students and our staff? Special education is a driver of our expenses, making sure that we provide for those special needs students in ways that are optimal for learning. How do we deal with operations, whether it's transportation, facilities, all of those things that support the work of learning? Technology and information, that's huge. It's become even more important since the COVID-19 pandemic has forced us into a world where technology is the major deliverer of education to students. But being, again, mindful of that. And then the last area really is incremental differences, and those are those things like wage increases that are driven by cost of living, utilities, all of those things that just kind of incrementally rise. So those are the big factors that really drive the budget. So you got this in your documentation, but this is sort of the 30,000-foot view of the budget in terms of what we're looking at. The way budgets are done by TMS, which I know well, is that we take a look at all funds that can be brought to bear on a budget, as well as the local funds, and then we kind of work through all of that. So you can see we took a look at what is the actual budget for FY21, came up with some proposals for FY22. You can see by cost center what the increases are that have been requested across the board. You can see down at the bottom of, let me just get my pointer out here, down at the bottom here. So we have an all funds figure of $22,776,940. The proposed budget request right now is applying $2,351,929 of grants and or revolving funds to be able to offset that big number, so that we'd be looking at a local appropriation of $20,425,011. So the proposed increase from last year's budget, which was $19,671,080, the proposed increase, taking into consideration that we would have these offsets, is $753,931, or a percent increase of about 3.83. So that's sort of the 30,000-foot view of the budget. And so when I was going through the requests that had been given to Andy Paquette for inclusion into the budget, divide them into two different categories, and one was around requested positions. And so you can see that for the Discovery School at Four Corners, there's a request to increase a behaviorist position from 0.5 FTE to a full-time, full-time equivalent at about $10,000. That's to support students who have behavioral and social emotional issues. The second request is for a building substitute, which would be somebody who would be assigned to the building and act as a substitute for teachers on a given day. Substitutes are becoming more and more difficult to find. And so having somebody on staff who can be at the ready is very much helpful. And then a request for a lunch recess monitor, which would be an paraprofessional type position for $20,000. So the total request of positions at Discovery School is at $78,000. At Federal Street School, there's been a request to increase the technology teacher from a 0.7 to a 1.0 full-time equivalent, which would be about $18,000. An increase of an art teacher from half-time to full-time for about $30,000, and an increase in physical education from a 0.8 to 1.0 at about $20,000, as well as a lunch recess monitor for $20,000. The increases in those sort of unified arts or specialist positions is to be able to provide increasing opportunities in both technology education as well as arts and health and wellness. To make sure that students are really getting everything that they need. And currently, with shared positions, it's making it a little bit of a struggle at Federal Street to be able to do that. And again, the lunch recess monitor position is, again, a position where somebody could monitor children while they're eating lunch. And at recess, that could help out, because right now at Federal Street School, the only person who is available to do that is the principal, and that's not always feasible in the world of the principalship to have to be doing lunch and recess duty all the time. So the total request for positions at Federal Street School is $88,000. At Newton School, again, looking at the needs that they have around educating students, and particularly in the area of literacy, they're requesting a reading teacher, additional reading teacher at about $60,000. They're also requesting the restoration of a music teacher for about $60,000. There was one prior to this school year. The teacher left and that position was never replaced. Looking at, again, a behaviorist, person who can work with students who have behavioral and social emotional issues, an additional there. A math interventionist, again, to help students in the work that they're doing in the area of mathematics.
No reading? That's fine. Just leave it.
Looking
Leave
at
it. Just leave it. Just leave it.
building.
You're off mute. Where's the mute?
I think I was just muted, but now I think I'm back on. So building monitor position at the equivalent of about $40,000, again, to help with lunch and recess coverage and a few other things. And then to add an elementary librarian, which there is not one on staff at this point. So the total request for personnel at Newton is $340,000. At Greenfield Middle School, they're requesting to restore an associate principal position. There were two. They're down to one, and looking at the return of students to in-person learning, requesting that to go back to two positions at about $75,000. Looking at a second teacher for the transitions program, a math coach and interventionist, replacing a unified arts teacher, and adding some instructional assistants to the transitions program, some additional instructional assistants to the ACES program, and then also to have some leadership team summer stipends to be able to help the leadership team, again, build and support the school. So the total request for Greenfield Middle School is $393,000 for requested positions. At the high school, again, they're down to one associate principal. In anticipation of students coming back, we're looking at restoring a second position. bringing in some special education support in the essential skills program with a teacher and an instructional assistant, behavior and mental health instructional assistant position, and also an instructional assistant transition coordinator, sort of job coach for those students who are looking to have that kind of help with them. Bringing on a construction and manufacturing teacher. As we know, STEM is a huge focus for a lot of high schools, and so there's a request for doing that. And then bringing in some reading and math interventionists, and hopefully fund that through the Title I program rather than local funds. At a 4.0 FTE, we'd be looking at about $196,000. So the total request for Greenfield High School is $451,000. 255 of that would come from local funds, and the 196 would come from grant funds. The last of the requested positions is a district-wide administrative assistant position for both the special education and maintenance departments. And that would be a shared position 50-50 between those two departments at about $30,000. So we're looking at in the total requests is $1,380,000 for requested positions. Out of that, $1,184,000 would come from local funds and $196,000 from grants. Any questions about positions before I move on to programs? $196,000 from grants. Any questions about positions before I move on to programs? Okay, moving right along.
Hold on, may I just interrupt you? I'm sorry, this is
Sure.
Susan Ekstrom. Everyone who is not speaking, if you would put yourselves on mute, that would be very helpful, and we wouldn't hear any little voices or anyone then. And it would keep with the prime speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Ekstrom. Sometimes there's also a lag, so that's, I think what we just got was a little lag in the discussion. So the programmatic requests, again, Discovery at Four Corners is looking for library supplies for about $5,000. Those were cut from last year's budget, so they're looking to restore that. And then they're looking for some reading and writing instructional resources for the classroom at about $50,000. Federal Street School is also looking for about $50,000 for reading and writing instructional resources. At Newton School, we're looking again at some reading and writing instructional resources, some math consumable workbooks, reading and math consumable workbooks, some digital resources for about $30,588. And then all elementary schools are looking for about $25,000 in professional development funds to be able to best utilize those reading and writing resources by giving teachers good training in that. At the middle school, they're looking for some math instructional resources for about $50,000. Greenfield High School is looking for some additions to several different lines, as you can see on this slide, for about $36,950. And then technology, some district-wide technology upgrades for hardware and network for about $200,000. So programmatically speaking, we're looking at $447,538 in programmatic requests. And then the transportation, which is probably something that jumped off the page at you, but in FY21, $720,027 was budgeted for transportation in hopes that revolving funds could be used to help support that. What we have discovered is that that makes the transportation revolving fund pretty tight. So the proposed increase is to have everything come from the general fund versus trying to offset from revolving funds. So it's an additional $584,000 for $584,976. Rattling off a lot of numbers here. So again, as we continue the discussion, as I said earlier, we're looking at that sort of analyzing the data. Even though this is a budget that we're presenting to you, it is a snapshot in time. Things may move around within the budget as time goes on. So constantly analyzing what we're doing, how we're doing it, taking action to make sure we're using our resources to the best of our ability, managing those funds wisely, and doing our research to make sure that those funds continue to be used along the way. And so that's pretty much what I have learned about your budget in a week and a half. So
Thank you, Dr. Houle. Appreciate that. And what we would do now is open up for school committee members to discuss by way of first a motion. And I'm looking for a motion to start the discussion and move to approve the FY22 budget as presented. Anyone?
Move, Jean Wall.
Member Wall, with the motion and a second.
Ekstrom, second.
Vice Chair Ekstrom with the second, and now let's discuss. School committee members. Oh, please, Andy, I see you putting your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Just
that's
some preliminary comments from the work that we had done with the Budget Finance Subcommittee as well, and to kind of echo the sentiment that Dr. Houle mentioned, that this, I want to say, is I'm going to say the first. I'm going to say not the first go at it with all the information that we received from administrators, but there are still some things that have been going on as we were going through this process. For example, right at the tail end of the Budget Finance Subcommittee preliminary work, the ESER 2 funding came out. So there's another level of work that we intend on doing, but with the timeline as to where it is that we need it to be regarding this hearing, and also the fact that you need to do a needs assessment and everything, those things we have not done those yet, but it doesn't mean that we don't intend to. Secondly, things like, as Dr. Houle mentioned, regarding the transportation, I would like to consider that like the worst case scenario picture, because with the hybrid and the shutdown, the revenue sources weren't there for 21, and even honestly prior to the shutdown, what the budget was originally built on, the funds weren't there in the first place. So as we've gone through to look at the actual transportation needs for the transportation that we provide, there's that further analysis, but this was just looking at where things were and where it is that we anticipated them coming. I do anticipate as we go into FY22 that we will be revisiting to look at some other funding sources from the revenue that we generate from that, but it's one of those things of the planning for the worst, hoping for the best. Secondly, also thirdly, some of the things that we had done in the discussions, and you'll see it might look slightly different, were things that the subcommittee felt, and I would agree, I'll say passionate about, on things like really segregating out a district-wide curriculum department, where it is that you see where that will make, say, just even structurally in the budget, more efficient for your vertical and horizontal integration of education across the district. So the subcommittee directed me to go through and call out what would be considered curriculum related district wide. So we've done that. And then lastly, one of the things regarding the technology, that's included in there, as I think those of us that have been around for a bit know, that every year we submit technology requests to the City Capital Planning Committee, and because of the definitions of what is defined as capital, those things don't necessarily meet the criteria for that. So again, Budget Finance Subcommittee asked to memorialize those into our budget, a la the analogy that we've talked about that I use is the textbook replacement concept, if you will, to include things like that. So there's a lot that we still need to do, honestly, but this was, again, I'll say, our first go at it with under less than ideal circumstances we find ourselves in, but some very fruitful discussions, I'd say, and also with the understanding that there will be more discussions to come. So that was it. Thank you. Sorry.
You don't have to apologize, Andy. That was great. Very helpful context. Thank you. Other questions and comments from the school committee? I'm going to assume, although she is not on my screen, that Member Hollins, do you have a comment or questions? Anyone else?
Yes, yes, I had just raised my hand. I had two comments and then I had two questions. For comments, I wanted to say that in the discussions about budget we had in subcommittee, the question was raised, how much of the increase, the percent increase, represents intractable contractual obligations? People move up a step or they have a contract that says they're going to get $500 more or less or whatever. And I just wanted to mention that, as I recall, that percent was about 1.5%. That is non-discretionary. It's baked into our personnel system. So I would like to mention that, and Andy will tell me if that was correct. But there's a certain percentage we can't do anything about, and I think that's about 1.5%. The other thing I wanted to say when we were talking about the arts, sometimes when we talk about that, it seems like, oh, we're just, very creative and very supportive of the arts, which happens to be true. But I wanted to mention that the teacher's contract, particularly at the elementary level, requires that everyone have a period free. If you've ever taught elementary school, you know why that's so it's demanding. So every single teacher every day gets one period free. And so for every single elementary classroom teacher every single day, there needs to be one period of something, because you can't leave a room full of kindergarten children without a teacher. And that's where the music and the art and the technology comes in. So it isn't just fluff. However many teachers we have, I don't know, but let's say we have 50 elementary teachers, we need 50 sections of music, art, technology, phys ed, whatever it is, every single day. So I wanted to explain, just as a comment, that some of that isn't, first, it's really important. There's state standards for all of that, including dance. And secondly, we have to have a certain amount of that so that we can have functioning elementary schools. And those are my two comments. My questions are, first, what's a little difficult for me is understanding the staffing, because it was my understanding that because of the extraordinary new expenses related to the pandemic and going to virtual, that there were some cuts, rollback, or whatever you want to call it, or not filling positions, and that was somewhere like 500 or 600,000. I don't remember the number exactly. But what would be really helpful to me is to know which of the positions we're talking about are bringing back positions that we had versus, once we restate positions we had, positions that we need in addition. And I don't know if there's any support, but I would be really comfortable if there could be some analysis of staffing based on the number of children we expect to return either virtually or in person, and to have a better understanding of our staffing. That would be really helpful. And my second thought had to do with library, which is a keen interest of mine, because we read to children all the time, and it's how they're enculturated into values. We're really interested in modern cultural values. The last time there was an elementary librarian in Greenfield, to my knowledge, it was one person who served all 3 elementary schools. And I wasn't aware we had cut the elementary books. It took a long time to get some money every year for every elementary school to replace with good literature, resources, and reading material. So I didn't understand if that library books was cut from every single elementary school and it's just being restored in one, and if the elementary librarian might be looked at in terms of something all the elementary schools need, particularly at the level that it looks like you're hiring a professional library media specialist. Having the library staffed is a different issue, I think. But those were my two thoughts, one on personnel and one on the whole elementary library issue, staffing and supplies. Thank you.
Thanks, Member Hollins. It looks like maybe Andy is prepared to address at least some of
Yes.
that. Go ahead.
First of all, Member Hollins is correct regarding the percent for the contractual obligations. Just wanted to share that. So, Member Hollins, you're hired. No, but secondly, regarding the staffing, we can go through because I'll say the administration were very detailed in their requests regarding which positions were restoring positions from the past and which were new. So as we proceed down this, I want to capture it all and go back and double check and make sure that we have everything, but that is definitely something that we can do. Regarding the library supplies, when for the former superintendent, when we were backing into the mayor's number, when I came on board in June, she gave each of the administrators the directive as to, X amount of dollars to cut from their non-salary positions. And so it was up to the administrators to come back with whatever it was that they deemed for this year, what it is that they would be able to reduce. So regarding that, it might not be that the cuts were done across the libraries at all the schools, but this school at the time felt that because of the way FY21 was anticipated to be, that they could then cut it for 21. But now, fingers crossed, 22 is going to be back to more in person, that they would want to restore those funds. So that's what that is.
Thank you, Andy. Other questions, comments, discussion?
Yes,
Member
please.
Ekstrom.
Thank you.
Member Ekstrom.
I just wanted to follow up on Susan's comment about music and art. Just lest anyone be confused, the music and art are important for more than just filling in the spaces. music actually has a lot to do with math, and the way your brain works with math and music is similar. And also art is the same. It teaches your mind how to interpret and do some long-term thinking and things like that. So before anyone said, hey, wait a minute, we do more than just that, I thought I'd put that out there. I know that's not what Susan meant by any means, but I just wanted to share that. That's all.
Thank you. Other questions, discussion, comments from the school committee?
Superintendent has her hand up, hon.
Oh, Dr. Gold, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to thank Member Ekstrom for recognizing as a former music teacher. I would say that, yeah, part of what we did was do those schedule needs, but it is certainly both mathematically and reading-wise, music and art and all of those things are just integral to a child's education. So thank you, Member Ekstrom, for recognizing that. I appreciate it.
Go ahead. Who was that?
Oh, I have a kind of comment question.
Secretary Johnson, go ahead.
About the transportation, maybe you could go over that a little bit more. Does this connect to something that's in my memory banks about the transportation group coming to us and suggesting that by offering some services to other districts, we could get some revenue in, and then maybe those numbers haven't quite panned out the way we expected? Can you kind of go over that a little bit more?
If I may, yes. From when we came on and when the budget that was handed over to us did have little over, I think, 200 some odd $1,000 of anticipated revenues coming in to offset exactly my understanding is what is you're saying regarding we would be providing transportation services ourselves to surrounding programs potentially in a way to, in addition to providing transportation needs for our district as well in some capacity. How the determination of the dollar amount that was used for the FY21 budget, I can't speak to, but I just can speak to the fact that what 21 was starting with wasn't even near what was anticipated for even being available, and going on similar to what we've talked about previously regarding the best practices and school committee policy about revolving account use. There wasn't even $200,000 in a transportation revolving account that was carried over into FY21 to be used to offset FY21 transportation. So when I looked at the, say, the annualizing of the transportation program based on using the history of 20 to 21 as what, all things being equal, what it would look like versus anticipated projected revenue, as of right now, I don't have much, and if any, I have to double check and see any anticipated revenue for FY22, which is why I want to make it clear that it is a worst case scenario. So as we get a little better understanding as to what 22 transportation is going to look like, that increase will come down. But as of right now, I just had no level of confidence regarding any sort of revenue generation potentially that would be able to offset with any meaning the FY22 projected anticipation of transportation.
Secretary Johnson-Musad, you're on mute.
Is that because COVID reduced the demand for those types of services, or was it just that the business model wasn't what we thought it would be?
So I would say it's my initial say opinion with the need to delve even deeper than what I already have is a combination of both. Obviously, the 21 revenues, I would say 90% driven by the COVID impact. My concern is that the $200,000 number that was in the 21 budget for projected revenue, looking at historically from 20, that wasn't even there. So I just worry that what was used as a basis for this model, understanding it was new, we didn't have enough maybe necessarily historical data to come up with I'm going to say a solid projection, as much as projections can be solid. COVID added another layer to it, but in hopes of working with the transportation department regarding, giving us, I'll say, best case scenario. Worst case scenario is what we have right now. So best case scenario would be with 22 potentially going back, what do we have for known services that we will be providing in working with both the transportation department and special education department to see where it is that we would then start to, I'll say, chip away at that increase. But I couldn't honestly, I'll say, in good conscience, come in with the model as it was in 20, even anticipated what it would have been in 21, looking at what we experienced in 20 when we came up.
Yeah, maybe this is an agenda item for a future topic, because where my mind is going now is I think we may have even made an investment in some vehicles to increase our capacity to provide those services. And so I wonder
Also
if that
correct.
was, yeah, I wonder if that was the reason why the projection was that maybe, I don't know how much use those got in the fiscal year you're using as a baseline, like whether the program really never got off the ground.
Sure, understood, and that's a very valid question and a valid point, and
Yeah.
part of the both looking at sides of the revenue and expenses, what I intend to look deeper at with
Okay.
both the special education and transportation. And yes, I would say during this budget development process, it clearly, I think, would be something that we would want to bring back both to, say, budget finance subcommittee as we start to go deeper into those things, and then to come report back out to the full committee for discussion at a full committee level.
Thank you.
Thank you both. I was just going to say, Andy, I think that makes sense what you suggested, sending it to Budget and Finance Subcommittee to kind of dig deeper into.
You're hired. So.
Wait till you hear my questions. I want to wait for anyone else on the school committee who has any questions. So I'm always upfront that I'm not a budget person, so I'm going to ask my ignorant questions now. I so appreciate seeing the requests from the various schools of positions What I'm not clear on is how many of those, if any, are actually reflected in the FY22 budget.
They all are.
They all are.
Yes.
So how is that level services? You understand what I'm asking?
We never, sorry, I don't know if, I apologize if we ever said that this was level service. We started, I'd say this is more of the needs-based.
Okay, so this is not a level services budget that as presented tonight.
Correct.
Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, we understand, I guess, the directive from the mayor, was clearly talking about level service. We understand that. We could back out, obviously, those things, but based on the subcommittee discussion, the discussion from the subcommittee was we need to know what the needs are based on our administrators' experience and expertise as to what it is. So.
And I see Dr. Houle wants to comment as well. And I just want to say that I agree with this procedure, this way of this method, however you want to call it. We do need to keep track of what we actually need to run the schools and what we need to provide a quality education. And so I understand why that was done. I know that sometimes I only hear bits and pieces of the discussions based on what I attend. And so I wanted to make sure I was understanding what we've done, which is the same as what we did at this time last year. We did exactly the same thing. We presented what we need, and then we looked to help from the city in making decisions about what was realistic for the coming year. Dr. Houle, please, would you like to address that as well?
Sure. I think what we need to think about too is that we're talking really more about level service back to FY20, because, for example, the music teacher at Newton School was in place in FY20, is not in place right now because of remote learning. The associate principal positions at both middle and high school were in place in FY20, are not in place in FY21. So I think when we're talking level service, we have to kind of look at 21 as an anomaly and think about what is level service from 20 into 22.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you both for that. I have one more question. Andy, you brought up the ESER 2, and I kind of see what you said. I want to make sure I understand it correctly. It sounds like what you said is very similar to when we were trying to identify a remote learning structure that would work for our students, or hybrid plans that would work for our students for this year. We kept getting new guidance, and we would kind of have to start over again or modify things that we thought were kind of in place. And it sounds like what you're saying is we got more grant funds. These are ESER is federal grant funds. Is that correct? Dr. Hill's nodding her head. Okay. And they haven't yet been worked into this budget. Okay. So like we did in FY21, because of us still kind of recovering, really definitely still recovering from the pandemic, we're looking at a similar need to revisit this budget probably a few times to address those things, money coming in that we didn't expect, or changes in what we have to function and how that changes the budget. That's accurate?
I would say that's correct. And in addition, I would say that that's something that in discussions, and Member Hollins brought it up as well in our last budget finance subcommittee, that when you look at some of the things that have been presented as needs from the administrators, based on what it is that the ESER 2 funding, as of what's been released right now, would be, say, allowable uses for it, some of what has been included and referenced here could potentially would be, say, very easily justifiable under the ESER 2 funding. I'll say the caveat regarding that is the same thing that we've always had regarding grant funds, as to, to put personnel into things like that. Are you creating yourself a position that will ultimately then have to be eliminated once the grant funds go away, or what have you. I know Dr. Houle mentioned that in our budget finance subcommittee. I don't say that I'll respectfully disagree with her, but I'll say that it's one of the things where in our world, I'll say long range planning is year to year. And so who knows, one of these programs, if potentially it ultimately gets funded by the grant or a grant, it doesn't necessarily even need to be that grant position of the ESSER grant. If by chance the program that is started with that like takes off like gangbusters and is very successful, we may, as a school district and committee and administration, want to revisit, our other plans to see what it is that we want to do to sustain this program and potentially do a legitimate trade-off one way or the other. So, but a long answer to your comment, which is yes, this is now the first of many discussions regarding the fact that we've got additional funding that we could potentially look to use as we go back to in person.
Thank you. And I try never to, this is my last comment, last question, I try never to hold anything that our elected representatives in Washington say until it's actually signed into law. But it does sound like potentially this next stimulus package that is kind of winding its way into the Senate at this point may contain funding for schools and municipalities. Is that something you all have heard as well? Okay, yes, but we don't count it until, the yahoos in Washington decide what they're going to do about it, right? Okay. Thank you all for that. Other questions or comments from the school committee at this time? Member Holland, you are on my screen. You have another comment? Go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to say that I appreciate right now in this period of time that because we have turnover in the central office, some turnover, and we have really talented consulting staff, it's a good opportunity to study a couple of things that we never really can get to for different reasons. And one is the central office staffing itself and any possible collaboration with the city. It's just really hard to do when people have very defined roles and jobs and they're in place. But it might be an opportunity for that. And I think another area I think we should study is early childhood, how we're using the funds, since we have an opportunity to look at that. Glenn mentioned transportation. But I think to the chair's point, if we could, because there's so many things to do, I don't know if they all get done or when, but the last year going remote had some consequences that had for some students positive consequences and for some negative in terms of regression, people that didn't learn well this way. If we could identify how we would use the ESSER II funding, the projections, I think, are between $1 million and $1.5 million or something dollars coming in for that. And it's true, it's only for 1 year, but nevertheless, it's there to use. If we could figure out how we're going to use that early on, it would be really helpful knowing what we can do with our budget. Are we going to put on tents? Are we going to get more remedial reading staff for a year to help pull people back up in reading and math? But I think that would be a great thing to do soon. And the only other comment I want to make is in our budget discussions, something I think is important is that we have a line item in our budget for annual district goals, and that we think about putting some money there. Each year we come up with initiatives that we really agree as a school committee are important. One year it was civics education, and this year it's looking at racial and social justice. What are we doing? And we agree and we vote it, but we don't have any specific money to really take it on and study it. So I think if we're going to have annual goals of where we want to focus our attention, we should have a line that says annual goals and whatever we can afford to put in there so we have money to actually work on the things we think are important. That would be a great adjustment in this budget. Thanks for the time to comment.
Thank you, Member Hollins. I appreciate that point very much. Something to work towards. for sure. Further comments, questions from school committee?
This is Member Karen.
Member Karen, go ahead.
I really just wanted to say thank you. This is really thorough and well laid out. It was really easy for me to read through and understand. I really appreciated breaking down the positions needed versus the materials programs needed. That was really helpful. And I also really appreciate knowing the difference between things we need to add and things we have to have because of contractual increases. This is amazing work in such a short period of time. I'm just really, really grateful and thankful. And that's really all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Karen. I agree very much with that. It's just amazing to see and how swiftly it was pulled together over the past couple of weeks. So thank you all for that hard work. Thank you to the Budget and Finance Subcommittee as well for the work they've done, the groundwork they were doing over the course of the year to put this together. It does sound like we are ready for a vote on the motion, which again was a simple motion to approve the fiscal year 22 budget as presented. So Secretary Johnson-Musad, would you do a roll call vote for us, please?
I will unmute. Let's see here. Member Karen.
Yes.
Vice Chair Ekstrom.
Yes.
Member Hollins.
Yes.
Secretary Johnson-Musad. I'm a yes. Chair Prayati.
Yes.
Member Wall.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Excellent. Thank you all again for that work. And we'll move into the next agenda item, which is the athletics fall 2021 proposal, which maybe that's not the best way to name it, but we know what we're talking about. And for those who are following along with the materials that were provided for the meeting, there is like 50 pages of athletics information. And we also have Coach Kuchevsky here to give us the overview. Mike, why don't you take it away?
Sure, thank you. Chair Prayati?
Yes.
Excuse me. Do we need to close the budget hearing?
Oh, you are amazing, Susan Farber. Thank you. Mike, 1 second. I knew I was going to forget this part. So I would like a motion to close the budget hearing at this time.
So moved. Johnson-Musad.
Second by Ekstrom.
Second from Member Ekstrom, then let's do a roll call vote.
Member Karen.
Yes.
Vice Chair Ekstrom.
Yes.
Member Hollins.
Yes.
Secretary Johnson-Musad. I'm a yes. Chair Prayati.
Yes.
Member Wall.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Susan Farber, for the reminder as well. Mike, go ahead. Give us an overview of what we're talking about here.
Sure. Thank you very much. First, I just want to say thank you for your vote in the winter. It was a very successful winter. The day that we started, the kids had smiles on their faces, and the day we ended, which was this past Friday or Saturday for hockey and last Tuesday for basketball, they wanted more. And we were just happy to give them the opportunity to be able to get what they got. And they were very, very pleased with it. Just to give you a heads up, our hockey team finished undefeated. Our girls basketball team finished undefeated. Boys, not so much, but we had some competitive games, and just wanted, as athletic department and as representative for all the student athletes, to say thank you for that opportunity. What I'm here for tonight is our fall 2 presentation. I know it says in there 21 fall, and that's next fall, but this is really an extension from what we did in the fall 1, which was between September 19th to November 1. And what we did with these sports of football and the boys and girls soccer and volleyball and cheering, that those were in skills and drills and practice only. And that was what was put down through DESE, EEA, and the MIA COVID task force. what we did, what the MIA did, we created a fall 2 for those sports I just mentioned to be able to compete in fall 2, which is starting today and goes until April 23rd. And what we're asking for is basically a start and a finish of those sports. My dog is going crazy right now and rounding, so I apologize any music. I mean any extra noise. But so what the plan is in your packets of the 48 pages that I made up was how we were going to go about the COVID protocols. Just to give you a quick review of how it went. Our kids would come into each practice. They would have their temperatures taken, ask the questions, all the COVID questions, and make sure that everybody's safe going in. Everybody has a mask on when they enter a building or a practice. We will be only playing schools within our Franklin County bubble, which contains Athol, Mahar, Frontier, Turners, Pioneer, Mohawk. Smith Academy is possibly and Hopkins. Smith Academy might have soccer. It looks like they will. They're not. They're technically in our Franklin County bubble because there are like schools, and we played them in basketball also in Hopkins. We'll be playing varsity and junior varsity sports games, and when fields are available is when we're going to be able to get out there and start playing. Volleyball will start, I believe the date's March 13th of games, but football and soccer's when the fields are available. With hopefully the wind tonight will blow off all the snow, which is what I'm hoping. Right now, we are looking at no fans, probably definitely for indoor, for volleyball indoors. The live stream went really, really well with GCTV, and I can't say enough for Philippe and Nick. Philippe was outstanding, getting all those games that we had live streamed. I heard nothing but good things to be able to do that, to have that on the GCTV YouTube. And FCAT out of Frontier, they teamed with GCTV and did live stream for our hockey games, and it was just a wonderful experience. The kids loved it; they felt like they were on TV, and I think the parents were quite pleased to be able to see. Of course, the parents would have loved to have been able to be in the gym to watch, but I believe this is the next best thing. Now they always have a tape of the game too. With fans, we have a meeting. Frank County Bubble has a meeting on Friday. I'm going to propose what the EEA guidelines are. Is to have 2 parents and siblings to be able to go to the outdoor games. I think that the metrics are going low. We did this in the end of fall 1 with field hockey because we played. The EEA allowed us to be able to play games. We did that for, I believe, 1 or 2 games at the end of fall 1. And it worked out fine. We had great social distancing, and we have COVID coaches that would check of all the parents in and would monitor to make sure that we have the proper things happening. So that will be an update. I am going to ask for outdoor sports to have fans there, at least parents there. And we're hoping that GCTV will be able to do live streaming in the volleyball games also. So that should be a good thing. Transportation has changed, and I'm so sure that you know that transportation has changed. They have gone back to normal transportation of 2 kids per seat, and that is, I don't think that made it through the packet. Looking
I
through
like
the
her new
packet,
superintendent.
they I don't think
I
it made
like
it
your
through, but those are the
Pyrex,
new
Mr. Jones.
transportation guidelines
What's with the
that they
what's
have
the
to
rules for
have
the
the
guy on?
windows down as they are traveling. So that's one of the difference differences with the transportation, but we are going to be able to transport our kids on bus. In winter, we use Greenfield Transportation for our basketball teams, and it worked out great. Jake was awesome, and for hockey, our parents drove our kids to the games because we felt with the co-op it was probably safer not to mix kids from other schools onto one bus, and it worked out really, really well. And the hockey kids are used to traveling all over the place anyways with their parents, so it wasn't a big deal. As before, all our coaches will be COVID certified through the NFHS website. They will all be take the protocol course. We'll have COVID assistance for each sports, let it be the coaches or parents doing the temperatures, and so the coaches can do their coaching duties and monitoring social distances at practices and games. Again, in the packet, all the guidelines that are amended by EEA on February 8th are in there, the MIA statement. Each sport modifications are in the packet for all our sports. If it's easier for you to get online, I don't believe the links came through because I'm a dummy with the Google, but I'm working on it. And but if the links didn't come through, you can go to the MIA website and then go to COVID Task Force. Everything is right on that website. So that's pretty much it. That's a quick overview of how we're going to do things. I would appreciate any questions at this time.
Actually, Mike, this is Susan Ekstrom. I have a question.
Sure.
So perhaps this is my own ignorance. Football is part of fall too. I don't remember us having a football season ever in March. Is that because of the pandemic, or is that what happens and we just don't participate in it? I'm curious.
It is something that is done because of the pandemic. Which is the neat thing about this, and I kind of presented it back in the day. This is going to be the first year ever, and probably the last year ever, that we could have a sport athlete in Greenfield. They could play field hockey in the fall, basketball in the winter, soccer in the fall too, and track and field, let's say, in the spring. That's never going to happen again because we only have 3 seasons. What we did is at the time of the EEA guidelines came out, they made football and they've made cheering high-risk sports. And so at high-risk sports at that time, we're only giving level 1, phase 1 levels to be able to only do practice, no games. So that's why we came up with not we, but the MIA, because we're all part of the MIA, came up with the fall 2 aspect to be able to play games because of the way we thought the metrics were going to go down. So that's where that was created. We chose as a Franklin County bubble to move soccer's from fall 1 to fall 2 because we felt that some of the modifications that we're putting on our kids at that time, we thought that they would probably change for fall 2, and which they did, the modifications of like heading the ball, throw-ins, and things like that. We felt that it wasn't really a game as our Franklin County AD bubble. We felt it wasn't really a game, and that's given the opportunity to play the real game in fall 2. But to really answer your question, yes, we will probably I hope to never play football in March again.
Exactly. Well, having had a 3-season athlete for a long time, good luck parents with 4 seasons.
Yeah, but you know what? It's going to be unique, and I'm getting to that part. My kids are sophomores and juniors, and I don't want it to end, and I can't imagine what I'm going to do when they leave my house.
I mean,
well, I kind of have an idea, but
bless your heart. So are there other people for us to actually compete with if we didn't do these things in fall 1 and now we're going to do them in fall 2? Is it that everyone else did it in fall 1 or no one else did these things in fall 1?
So our bubble stayed together. That's kind of what
Okay.
we're in our own little niche up here. So everything that we're doing at Greenfield is happening in Athol, Mahar, Frontier, Pioneer, Turners.
Okay.
So we stayed in our little bubble.
And we talked about pre-pandemic, or maybe it was during, football being more of a consolidated program amongst with our school and Turner's Falls, and maybe it was Mahar or Orange, something, just for so that there were appropriate people playing at appropriate levels. Is that something that we're still planning to do?
So yes, we plan on having Mohawk and Turners and Greenfield as a co-op.
Okay.
We've been
Yes.
approved for 1 year to be able to try it. I think we're going to get wavered into a second year, but even if we don't, I'm going to apply for it again.
Yeah.
Our numbers, we would not be able to do football at Greenfield if we didn't have the kids from Mohawk and Turners. Nor would Mohawk be able to do football, nor would Turners be able to do football.
Right.
So it's just the type of times, and we're hoping to have 30 kids out there to be able to play.
It's
If we
interesting.
get that, that would be awesome.
I wonder if you'll have more because parents want to get their kids out of the house. They're saying, no, you're going to play football. Off you go.
Well, that happened in volleyball. Volleyball numbers are sky high, and unfortunately, we can't have a lot of kids on the playing court right now.
Yeah.
The governor just opened it up a little bit, so that has saved us a little bit. But we were scared for a minute there.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Sorry to monopolize your time. I'm sure other people must have questions.
Dr. Hollins does. I saw her hand. I just
What else?
No, sir.
Well, if I could, I had a couple of questions. I'll just say them all at once. I understand the city is building planning. There's some plans for a skate park finally in Greenfield, and I didn't know if that's considered a sport. But my next question was, are there any sports that we don't offer that are in demand? I don't know the answer, but like crew or swimming or something. And I wondered why golf is. When I looked at the list, there are some sports that we'll do in the spring and they continue through the summer, but golf wasn't one. So I didn't quite understand that, because it seems to me most people I know that golf, it's sort of through the summer. And lastly, I just wanted to put in a plug for Greenfield. I think we've been fee-free for our sports for at least a decade. I hope we continue to be fee-free, and some of that's possible because of the Education Foundation, which I hope is still providing uniforms and things that our fees used to do. But I think we're one of the few fee-free high schools around. I personally find that terrific. And I appreciate that we have an Education Foundation. So I was just curious about sports we don't offer and golf. Thank you.
Sure. So the first question, you mentioned crew. It's funny that a few years ago, a friend of mine that was up in the Pioneer District started a crew club, and we offered it, and nobody jumped on it here. We kind of he had some boats that were up in the Connecticut River and out of Northfield Mount Herman up in that area. And we got together, or he got with me, and I offered to anybody that really wanted to do it, and nobody did. Swimming, we had one student athlete show interest in swimming, but unfortunately we don't have a pool, and the YMCA has a pool, but we need more than one athlete to be able to offer swimming. We talked to Turner's Falls to be able to co-op with them, but the way a co-op works is if you don't have enough kids, then you can ask another school that doesn't have that sport to co-op with them. Turner's Falls has enough kids to be able to compete in a team, so they can't really ask for a co-op, and we just can't create co-ops. The other question about golf. Golf was offered as a fall sport now, and golf was played in the fall. So we did compete in the fall with our golfers. And just to go on to the Greenfield Education Foundation, they've been absolutely wonderful in helping out athletics in different aspects of uniform. We got a scoreboard controller. Off the top of my head, I can't think of much else because it's been so long that it feels like we've been out of school for a year. Oh yes, we have been out of school for a year. So I don't have I can't remember a lot of things that happened in way back when, but they have been very instrumental in helping us out. And Fee Free has been outstanding. I can be proud to say that we're one of the only districts that does not charge anybody to play. And it really helps our families, and it keeps something off of their mind, to worry about if to play a sport at Greenfield. And that's, they've got other things to worry about other than, we want them to have an enjoyable experience, and we're trying to do that as best as we can. Anybody else?
Just thanks for all the thorough information and care that you put into this this packet for us. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I missed it. I had a little one who had to go to bed. I'm sure it was
Oh,
excellent.
Joe.
So are we ready to take a vote? Yes. Okay, so Secretary Johnson-Musad, could you do a roll call vote for us, please?
We need
Sure.
a motion.
Yeah, I
there was
think
no
we just
motion?
had Q&A, no motion, yeah.
Okay. So how about a motion to approve the Fall 2 sports as proposed?
So moved, Hollins.
Member Hollins, in a second?
Second, Johnson-Musad.
Okay. Either one of them is fine. And we had all of the discussion, is that right? Any further? Last chance. Okay, so let's do a roll call vote, please.
Member Karen?
Yes.
Vice Chair Ekstrom?
Yes.
Member Hollins?
Yes.
Secretary Johnson-Musad, I'm a yes. Chair Poyetti?
Yes.
Member Wall?
Yes.
Motion carries.
I appreciate you very much. Thank you for everything.
Thanks, Coach.
And
thanks for all your work.
hopefully see you live soon.
I would like that. Absolutely. Take care.
There is one thing, though, that I just want to make sure that everybody knows, is that we did not have any COVID tracing out of any of our sports that was caused by athletics. That was done. We did have some problems of stoppage and anything that was brought from the outside, but nothing from athletics was proved to be done. So just want to let everybody know that.
Well, I've seen the protocol at work. You guys take it seriously, and you make sure everyone's following the procedure. So we appreciate that. That's what's going to keep everyone safe.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Have a good night.
You too.
You too.
Okay, so we are on to, I'll just get back to my agenda. Oh, the district map is item 5 on the agenda. And we kind of realized, as we sometimes do with our agendas, that we're just not quite ready to discuss this one yet. And we will have it as a part of the agenda for our next meeting, which is our regular meeting for the month of March on March 10th. That's next Wednesday. So at this point, I would like to ask for a motion to table the district map discussion for the March 10 school committee meeting.
So moved, Johnson-Musad.
Secretary Johnson-Musad, in a second.
Second, Hollins.
A second from Member Hollins. And the only, I'm open to a little bit of discussion on this. The only thing I would like to do is actually announce that we are actively looking for members from the community to join the discussion on redrawing the district map, which we have an advisory committee for. When the school committee has advisory committees, we have community members that serve on those and help with the decision making. If anyone who's listening tonight is interested in being a part of that advisory committee, you can actually email the entire school committee. I think the email address is school, the full word, COM, at gpsk12.org. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's it. But please do send the email that you're interested. And I'm going to have to step away for a second because of the wind. I've got a panicked little one upstairs. Can we do I'll start you off with the roll call vote, and I'll be right back.
I just want to say the email address is school, I think you meant for the school committee, right? So it's schoolcom, schoolcom @gpsk12.org. So she wanted a roll call vote on this? Was that what? Okay. Member Karen?
Yes.
Vice Chair Ekstrom?
Yes.
Member Hollins?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Secretary Johnson Musad is Chair Prayati back. No, and Member Wall?
Yes.
The motion carries. Vice Chair Ekstrom, do you want to move us along to the next agenda item?
I certainly will. Excuse me. We have up next on our agenda is in-person learning, and I believe our superintendent has an update on that.
I do.
If you wouldn't mind, go ahead.
Yeah, I do indeed. We are beginning to now think about bringing students and staff back in for in-person learning. There has been a little more urgency put towards that by the Commissioner of Education. He has announced that he and the governor, that their desire is to get students back in sooner rather than later and full-time, not even hybrid. And they're looking at potentially having elementary students in as early as April 5th. So we've got a very short time frame to think about this. I was on a call with the commissioner last week. He also talked about the fact that he is going to ask for a special board of elementary and secondary education meeting in an effort to change the structured learning time regulations so that hybrid and remote learning would no longer count as hours of instruction. So that again adds another level of urgency to the work that we're trying to do. So, that said, tomorrow we start with our E-team talking a little bit about how we're going to begin the process of getting ready to return students to school, where we are at with things like air purifiers. My colleague Alan Himmelberger is also on with me tonight, and Alan's been working with the nurses on pooled testing. So, Alan, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that as part of this whole plan.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. And just wanted to let everyone know that you have one awesome nursing staff. We met last Wednesday, and they are working diligently to master the logistics, which are rather intricate, around pooled testing. And I was also on with Janet Dickinson, and we are moving forward. I think the district is well positioned to take advantage of this. The state, I think on the same call that Dr. Houle referenced, the commissioner extended the state's picking up the tab on this, the expenses for this. From March 28th, he moved it to April 16th, which takes it right through to the break. So that's a good thing. And everybody felt strongly that they wanted to continue the testing for the balance of the year. I think that is a very wise decision. And I believe that there is stimulus and ESSER funds that will be available to pick up a relatively modest amount, I believe. So the training is happening this week, along with the vendor, Ginkgo, which is one of the three vendors that the state has provided. And they do an awful lot of the work setting up the platforms and making sure that everyone's trained properly. And so I'm really confident that this can move forward, and we'll know a lot more. We have another meeting this Wednesday as well. So each week we will get together, and it has been a terrific staff to work with. So kudos to all of them.
And another thing too, that, these are all parts of steps that we're taking to make sure that there is an extreme level of comfort with returning to our schools.
Yes.
And again, doing the work of educating children. And school nurse leader let me know over the weekend too that there's been some arrangements made with the town with regard to getting vaccinations for all staff in about 3 weeks. So there will be some communication going out within the next day or so to staff to alert them to the fact that vaccinations will be made available. Probably it will be a one-day clinic that will be held that will be specifically for public school staff to be able to become get their first shots at least, and then to move forward with the second shot as well. So that way, again, it's an extra measure of protection for both staff and students that we're trying to bring about, and taking a look at being able to follow the guidance. As the AD mentioned with athletics, the commissioner did come out on February 11th with a communication lifting the capacity limits on school buses. So that's another thing that gets removed. There will still be things like assigned seating and only two to a bench and windows open on the bus and all of those things to make sure, and masking as well, to make sure that students are safe. So tomorrow begins the process of us trying to take a look at what are the things that we do need to be able to open safely, and what will that look like in light of what has come down from Malden our way with regard to the changes and moving forward. So the goal is to get the elementary children in first, followed by adding the middle school students. There's still some no, I shouldn't say hesitancy is the right word, but there's still some discussion about how it might happen for high school students, because obviously the older students are, the more likely there is for transmission. So, again, just looking at how to be able to do that safely and well, and what that means for both staff and students. One of the things that we'll be doing this week, we'll be putting out a survey to families to ask intentions. Parents can choose through the end of this school year to remain remote if they would like to, starting in the fall of FY22. This coming fall, that will not be an option for families, but certainly we want to survey our families and to find out from them who intends to return to in-person learning and who does not, and also who intends to access transportation and who does not, because those two pieces will be extremely important to our planning for a return to in-person learning. So that's one of the steps that's in place moving forward as well. The commissioner says there will be more guidance forthcoming, and so we await that guidance while we try to begin to sort these things out and get moving along.
Thank you both for those updates. That's very appreciated. Let's open it up for, so there's no motion related to this, but I think there's likely questions from the school committee members about this. And it does sound like, I'll start with the first question, Dr. Houle. It does sound like we'll have at our regular meeting next Wednesday a little bit more progress on this that we could discuss. And there might be a need for decision making, perhaps. We don't know yet. Okay. How about other questions and discussion?
I have a comment.
Please.
Thank you both for your report and your, diligently, and with our excellent staff, working to follow the guidance of the commissioner and also of the school committee. I just, I kind of feel a little bit overruled by the commissioner and by the Baker administration. I have enormous concerns about the pressure they're putting on our schools to reopen on such a fast timeline. The Baker administration is not inspiring confidence in me by going against the guidance of public health officials. Dr. Fauci was on one of the Sunday talk shows and was asked about a superintendent who said, I can get my students in with 3 feet distance, but I can't get them in with 6 feet distance because we just don't have the space. And what do you say to that, Dr. Fauci? And he couldn't say anything, you know. Honestly, like less than 6 feet goes against the public health guidance that they're putting forward, especially for the high school students, but we don't actually know how far down that level of safety goes in terms of age, and obviously it's dependent on cases and so on. But I mean, I'm very gratified to hear that our case numbers are going down in Greenfield. I'm guessing that there is safety for some level of going back to school, which is what we have voted for. I just am concerned about following the leadership of an administration which is opening up restaurants to full capacity against all guidance from public health. So I just wanted to make that comment, and I do appreciate the good work by all the well-intentioned people here in our district to kind of manage some seemingly unrealistic expectations.
Well put.
Yeah, thank you, Secretary Johnson-Musad. Other questions or comments, or Alan or Dr. Hill, do you want to comment at all on that? I guess the question that brings up for me maybe would help is our so there's CDC guidance that's very clear about opening schools, and the bit I've been paying attention to what Charlie Baker and Jeff Riley are saying, it does not necessarily parallel, or it doesn't seem like they're saying the same things that the CDC is saying are safe. I'm wondering if you have comments on any of that.
There is a little bit of conflict within the guidance from both the CDC and the DPH, but again, if you look at the Biden administration, there is a strong push, and I think that's part of this latest round of stimulus funding, and there is a strong push to try and get students back into schools and to do so safely. I think with regard to the 3 feet versus 6 feet of spacing within a classroom, if you're looking 3 feet edge to edge of a desk, you're probably talking close to 6 feet nose to nose. You know, if you want to think about it from that perspective, and using some of the modeling that came out back this summer about placing desks in sort of a honeycomb staggered pattern, that even that 3 feet, you know, really becomes larger than some people think it is. But certainly we've got some work to do in terms of getting around to the schools, putting you know, furniture in classrooms and trying to figure all that out. If there's extra furniture that we have to take out, where are we going to store it? You know, all of those logistical things that will come with this whole process as to how we're going to be able to do this in a way that provides for the safety of our staff and students, because that certainly is priority number one, along with getting kids back in and educated in person, and getting them connected socially. I ran a virtual school for 2 years, and I do know that for some students, virtual learning is a great way to do education, but it is not for every child. And so, you know, how we strike that balance, and in the face of you know, some pretty definitive guidance now coming our way, and a possible regulatory change, which, you know, has the force of law when you come right down to it. And if that regulatory change comes to fruition, then we're going to be in a very different place. And so we're going to need to move quickly. But, you know, the goal is to keep the community and the staff informed along the way as we go through this process, and sort of partner together and see how we can figure out how to make this work in a way that is both safe and educationally sound students.
Thank you. Thank you. Other questions or comments from the school committee? I have a couple. I don't usually have questions, but tonight I'm like, wait, I actually have a question. So what does this do for MCAS? Is MCAS canceled? Is MCAS still on and just delayed? It's still on and just delayed.
Yeah, MCAS is still on, and there are 2 hurdles that have to be overcome if that were to change. The number one hurdle would be from the federal government, because it is within the Every Student Succeeds Act, and has been since No Child Left Behind and prior legislation. So, we have to be mindful of what the federal government has to say. The second hurdle is the fact that this is written into Massachusetts state law. That law was suspended by vote of the legislature in the spring, but it was just a one-time vote. So again, it's the two entities that we have to deal with, both the federal government as well as the state government, to be able to figure out whether or not MCAS could be changed in some way, shape, or form. So
thank you for that. I had gotten some feedback over the past week, or maybe it was I don't think it was last week, that there was some confusion over, we did take a vote and we approved, I believe unanimously, a resolution around MCAS, but approving a resolution does not cancel it statewide or even for just our students. So I asked that in part so we could make that clear to folks who are listening, that MCAS at this point is still on. The next question I have actually is about the pooled testing, and I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. The state will pay for this program for a bit of time, and then if we continue to do it, the cost shifts to the district. You're nodding, so that's
Yes.
that right? And how long will they pay for it for? And do we get the option to stop once they're no longer paying for it?
Yep. So the state, when they first put the program out there for districts to choose, they were paying for it through March 28th. And then last week, I think partly along with the political landscape shifting, they also extended the payment. The state would pick up through April 16th, so up until the April vacation. After that, the districts have their choice to either continue with the pool testing and pick up the tab some other way, or they could stop at that point. I think a lot of places, to Glenn's point, are going to want to be as safe as possible. So most people I hear are going to continue with the program. But between the stimulus funding and the ESSER funding, I believe that there'll be, I hate to say this, but minimal impact on the budget.
Sure. No, that's what I would expect as well. I just wanted to make sure I was understanding that correctly. Thank you. And I feel like I had something else, but I have actually forgotten what it was. So any other questions or comments from the school committee? All right, I'm not hearing anything else. Again, we really appreciate that update. I think it's helpful for us as a committee and certainly helpful for people who are listening to the meeting. So thanks again. And we will move into our final item for the night, which is the superintendent search update. And I think it makes sense at this point to have Member Wall, who is the chair of the superintendent search committee, for us give a brief update on where we're at.
I am very excited to report that we got 28 plus a little bit more letters of interest, people who want to help in finding a new superintendent for the Greenfield schools. The bad news about that is we cannot manage a committee of 28 people, and so we are going to have to narrow down the people that we can allow to be on the search committee. And I wanted to let everybody know that we're trying to make everyone's voice heard on this committee. And we have made a list of the people that we think are important to be heard, and they include teachers, assistants, parents, principals, community leaders, someone from the city council, special education, service organizations, senior citizens, and union members. And in going through all of the letters and the criteria that people have told me they possess, and talking with other people, I've gotten the list narrowed down to 15 people and reserve the right to maybe tweak it a little bit more tomorrow before I send out emails to everyone who has sent a letter, letting them know whether they're going to be on the committee or not. It's been a very difficult thing to narrow it down, and part of what I wanted to do was make sure that people who have reached out to the school committee and talked with us about their concerns could be part of the committee instead of maybe those who have always been vocal and always spoken out. And we just wanted to make sure that we have a mix of people. And so that's what we're trying to do. The committee is going to be working to put together a criteria for the new superintendent. And all of this will be public meetings. And, you know, you can come and give us public comment at the meetings. We're going to, after we've got the criteria together, we're going to ask for applicants. And then we'll go into executive session to interview the applicants. We'll probably be doing 2 applicants on a day's meeting, and we'll narrow the group down to 2 or 3. And those 2 or 3 people will then be brought back to the school committee, and all information will be public, all interviews will be public, all discussion of the applicants will be public. So again, those of you who are not selected to be on the search committee will totally be able to have your voice heard, and we hope that you will take advantage of that opportunity. You just won't be able to vote. But that's the plan at this point, and I will send out emails tomorrow notifying people of whether you've been accepted for the committee or not. And thank you all for your interest and for your continuing to let me know that you want to be on the committee and that you hope I'll let you know soon. So thank you all.
Thanks, Jean. And then the next piece you and I can maybe tackle together related to this same topic, which is we will be hiring, we've talked about this a couple of times at previous meetings, we'll be hiring a firm to assist us with the search. And we actually posted, I apologize, I got the materials which are public and which are posted to our website. They got out late today. It was after 2 o'clock for sure. But they are now posted, the proposal that we're going to vote on tonight for the assistance with the search. And a little bit about what this group will do. So the group is the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, of which we are a member, Greenfield Public Schools. And we will work with them to develop a process that is, as Jean described, very transparent, and they will manage for us more of the detail work of not only helping to get the word out to recruit qualified candidates, but also helping us with developing the process for vetting those candidates from start to finish. And that proposal is, like I said, it's been out in the, it's posted, I'm sorry, and we are going to vote on it as a school committee tonight. And hopefully between Jean and member Ekstrom and myself who've read it and who have met with Liz LaFond, who is our representative from the Mass Association of School Committees, will be able to answer questions and get it to an affirmative vote tonight. So did I miss anything, Jean or Susan?
I would just like to add that we have now a very capable group of interim superintendent and staff running the schools. And so we can take our time and find the perfect person for Greenfield. You know, we do not have a time schedule that we have to have somebody in by such and such a date. And I want the public to also feel good about that. And if we don't get people that we love at the first go round, we can always have a second one. So please understand that the school committee is going to find someone that fits in Greenfield and can work with the community and get the children educated. That's our goal.
Thank you for adding that. I think that's really important. There will be a semblance of a timeline, and we'll work through that timeline to perform a search that is as extensive and transparent as we possibly can. And we'll see what we get at the end. And we're looking for unanimous 100%. I don't want to go way out there, but support for the candidate that we find and ultimately select. And as we said, and as I think folks have started to see, we have a group from TMS with Andy Paquette as the business manager, and Dr. Kuhl and Dr. Himmelberger and Dr. Ekstrom, who are very capable of guiding us until we reach the point where we can fly away on our own, so to speak. So thank you for adding that part as well. So with that, let's do a motion. How about something like a motion to approve the execution of the contract presented from the Mass Association of School Committees to assist with the superintendent search process?
So move, Johnson Musad.
Thank you, Secretary Johnson Musad. A second? Anyone?
Second.
Second from Member Wall. And how about discussion?
I have a question related to Member Wall's report. I just was wondering if in your kind of criteria in seeking diverse representation in terms of roles, parents, teachers, assistants, et cetera, is there also a lens for looking at racial and ethnic diversity, LGBTQ representation, et cetera, those kind of disproportionately sometimes negatively impacted groups?
Of course, we've tried to include all of those groups to the best of our ability from the pool that we had to choose from. That the pool was 28 people, and we've tried to choose those that we think are the most representative of the community. And as I keep saying, everyone else is welcome to weigh in through the process. Thank you for that question. That's a good one.
I would just encourage, since you are saying that we do have plenty of time, that if, because of for whatever reason, it turns out to be essentially an all-white group in particular, I wonder if we might take some more time and do some other outreach to try to recruit some more diversity to that group.
Thank you for that
Let's
suggestion.
see what we get.
Yeah.
But yes, we're very conscious of that. We're also looking at a kind of a supplement to the assistance from MASC. There are groups out there. There's one in particular that we've looked at that will specifically help with recruitment of a more diverse candidate pool, and that's critically important to us. And so we are batting that around. It's early now, so we can pretty much add that still if we needed to.
Thank you.
I saw a couple other hands. Member Ekstrom, Member Hollins after that.
I can't believe I'm only doing clarifying things this evening. Just to clarify, the Dr. Ekstrom is not related to myself. I didn't want anyone to think that there was any sort of nepotism type thing going on. And our names are not spelled the same. Our last names are not spelled the same. But I have asked everyone to refer to me as Dr. Ekstrom from here going forward. Just as a matter of, come on.
There we go. Is that your only comment?
That's it.
Okay. Member Hollins, please go ahead.
I wanted to speak to Member Johnson Massad's comments about the importance of racial and ethnic diversity. But what I wanted to say is, And I did, even though it came late, read through the proposal from MASC. There's two really important components where we have to work with them. One is how we define what we're looking for, and the other is the ask. So we can really think what questions we want to ask and what information we want to know about the people, and we can get at these issues of sensitivity and commitment to looking at non-discrimination and diversity in the school district, moving us forward through those two aspects of the search project, even if we don't have the perfect composition based on people who submit their names. But there are ways to really get at this in addition in the process. I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying there are multiple ways that we can try to get at our interests in the process.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from the school committee? Really? That's it? Are we ready to vote? Okay, so the motion is to approve the execution of the contract presented from MASC in assisting with the superintendent search process. Let's do a roll call vote.
Member Karen,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ekstrom,
Yes.
Member Hollins,
Yes.
Secretary Johnson Musad, I'm a yes. Chair Poyetti,
Yes.
Member Wall,
Yes.
motion carries.
Wonderful. So we will start that process tomorrow and begin moving forward with that. And I want to thank Member Wall and also Member Ekstrom, who've been really working with me to get this moving forward. In particular, Member Wall, who's spent a great deal of time reviewing the letters of intent and making decisions on moving forward. So thank you for all that work, and I think it's just getting started. All right. So that is the end of our public agenda. And to my surprise, it does sound like we do not need an executive session this evening, which brings us to adjournment. Believe it or not, at 7:51.
Holy crow!
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved by Member Ekstrom.
Second, Johnson Musad.
And a second from Secretary Johnson Musad. Let's do a roll call vote, please.
Member Karen,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ekstrom,
Yes.
Member Hollins,
Yes.
Secretary Johnson Musad, yes. Chair Poyetti,
Yes.
Member Wall,
Yes.
motion carries.
Wow. We are adjourned. Thank you, Dr. Houle, for such a smooth first public meeting for you. We appreciate all your efforts on that budget. Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone who attended. And it sounds like I was having some microphone troubles tonight, and I apologize if anyone was having trouble hearing me. I finally took my headphones off 10 minutes